They used my college fund to buy Kylie a car. I found out when I saw her post a photo on Instagram grinning like a brother behind the wheel of a brand new Mini Cooper. The caption? Thanks Mom and Dad for making my dreams come true. Graduation cap red heart hashtag spoiled butlist. That car was supposed to be my future. My name is Jake. I'm 41 now, but this starts back when I was 21, living in the back bedroom of my parents' house in Dayton, Ohio. I paid $400 a month in rent to them. My little sister Kylie? She paid nothing. They called it just helping out while you're in school. Kylie wasn't in school. She was on a gap year, her second one. Meanwhile, I was juggling 2 part-time jobs, classes at a state college, and baking in a diner kitchen every Friday night just to cover my books. I didn't complain. I figured maybe money was tight. Maybe they were doing the best they could. Until one night, my grandfather called. He'd asked how school was going, and I made some passing joke about getting good at surviving off day-old bread and cold coffee. He went quiet. Then he said, "Wait, didn't your parents give you that college fund?" I paused. "What college fund?" There was silence again. A kind I didn't recognize. "Jake," he said slowly, "your grandmother and I gave your parents $50,000 when you were 16. To be used only for your education. Your mother said it was going into a savings account. For you." My hands went cold. That money had never existed, not for me. I'd never seen a dollar of it. I told Grandpa the truth. About the rent. The jobs. The bills. About Kylie's car and gadgets and gap year trips. When I finished, he didn't say anything for a long time. Then, in a tone I hadn't heard from him since I was a child. "I'm going to fix this. But we don't speak of it again. Not yet." And just like that, everything started to shift. The next morning, Grandpa showed up unannounced. He knocked once and let himself in, same way he always had. My mom was at the kitchen counter sipping coffee, pretending to read a magazine. Dad was watching ESPN like nothing was wrong. Kylie wasn't up yet. He didn't say hello. "Where's the paperwork?" Grandpa asked. My mom blinked. "What, eh?" "The account. The fund. Show me how much is left." She hesitated, then lied. "We had to use some of it," she said. "Things got tight." "All of it?" Grandpa asked, voice flat. "It was for the family," she said, eyes narrowing. "We thought Jake needed to learn how to stand on his own. That was it. The experiment. I wasn't forgotten. I was a control group. Their little academic test in resilience. They gave Kylie everything. And gave me nothing on purpose. Jake needed to learn responsibility," my dad added, like that explained the missing 50 grand. Grandpa didn't raise his voice. He just nodded once and said, "You'll be hearing from my attorney." Then he turned to me and said, "Pack a bag." That night, I moved into Grandpa's house. And 2 days later, my parents found out what consequences actually feel like. My parents didn't believe it at first. They thought Grandpa was bluffing, that he'd cool off, maybe give them a scolding and move on. They were wrong. Within a week, their names were removed from every trust, insurance policy, and property document connected to him. Their access to the family accounts? Frozen. Their retirement contributions through his firm? Terminated. Quietly. Legally. He didn't scream. He didn't warn. He just moved everything. They found out through a letter. Formal, cold, notarized. They'd lost not just their financial cushion, but their illusion of control. At the same time, Grandpa transferred the deed of one of his commercial properties to a new LLC under my name. He sat me down in his study, handed me a stack of folders, and said, "You're not going to pay rent anymore. You're going to own something." Inside was a fully outfitted bakery, shuttered during COVID, now ready for revival. No debt. No lease. All mine. "You work hard," he said. "Now you work for yourself." I didn't know what to say. But I didn't need to. He'd seen the inequality with his own eyes now. And he'd made his decision. Back at my parents' house, Kylie was having a different kind of breakdown. Her tuition reimbursement was denied. Her car insurance lapsed. And suddenly, the girl who never worked a day in her life was applying for jobs on her cracked iPad. 2 weeks later, Kylie called me. Not to apologize. Not to ask how I was doing. She called because her card got declined at brunch. "You need to talk to Grandpa," she said, like I was some kind of mediator. "He's punishing everyone just because you couldn't handle paying rent." I didn't say a word. Just let her fill the silence with excuses. "You always made things harder on yourself," she said. "You wanted to struggle. Nobody told you to work night shifts." I hung up. That same night, Grandpa handed me another folder. This one was thicker, filled with financial records he'd pulled from his own archives. It showed exactly how the 50 grand had been used. Kylie's private SAT tutor. Kylie's new phone. Kylie's art camp. Kylie's first year of college, the one she dropped out of halfway through. It wasn't even a mystery. The transfers were labeled. My parents hadn't stolen the money in secret. They'd used it openly, casually, like it had never belonged to me at all. They'd erased me on purpose. And now, for the first time in their lives, they were waking up to a world where they didn't control the narrative. But it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about who they were when nobody was watching. And people were watching now. My mom showed up at Grandpa's doorstep. No warning. No invitation. She had that fake smile she used whenever she wanted something: soft voice, dramatic eyes. Like she was stepping into a soap opera instead of a reckoning. "Jake," she said, "we really need to talk. This whole situation, it's gotten blown out of proportion." She tried to hug me. I didn't move. Grandpa came around the corner. "You're trespassing," he said, voice low. "Leave." She blinked like she didn't understand English. "I'm your daughter." "You were," he said, "before you lied to my face and stole from your own son. You gave us that money," she snapped. There it was, the real voice. Entitled, sharp, used to being in control. "You never said it had to go to Jake." "It didn't have to be said," Grandpa replied. "Because I trusted you. That was my mistake." She tried again. "We're your family." "No," he said. "Jake is my family. You're just someone I used to believe in." She stormed off, slamming the screen door behind her. Kylie posted a passive-aggressive quote the next day. "Some people only love you when you're struggling." I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Because word had already started to spread. Among Grandpa's circle, his golf club, the church board, the bank, the family reputation they guarded so carefully, it was cracking. And the ones who cracked it had their own last name. A week after I moved out, I got the first email. No call. No knock at Grandpa's door. Just a subject line that read, "Let's rebuild." 3 paragraphs polished like a press release. "We understand that feelings were hurt, but it's time to move forward as a family. Things were never as black and white as they may have seemed." They framed it like some unfortunate misunderstanding. A necessary decision made from love. Said they believed in tough lessons and thought I could handle more than Kylie. What they never said, "I'm sorry." What they never admitted, "We stole from you." Instead, they pitched the lie like it was a gift. "You were always the strong one. We wanted Kylie to feel safe. We assumed you'd understand." Then came the second email. This one CC'd Kylie. Her message was a mix of faux humility and manipulative guilt. "I didn't even know there was a fund. If I had, I never would have let them use it for me. I'm sorry if it hurt you. But you just left. You didn't even say goodbye." As if disappearing quietly was worse than what they'd done. As if not giving them a scene made me the villain. Kylie went on about how hard college was now. How her card was suddenly declined. How she was being punished for something she never asked for. Then the request. "Can you talk to Grandpa? He listens to you." There it was. Not an apology. Not a reckoning. Just leverage. A quiet attempt to use my access to undo the consequences they finally started to feel. I didn't reply. That night, over dinner, Grandpa asked if I was okay. I told him the truth. They don't want me back. They want the life they had before you found out. He nodded and passed me the remote. We watched TV and didn't speak again about it. But the next day, he made a call to his attorney. He was done too. 2 weeks later, Kylie called me directly. Her tone was different now. Less entitled, but not exactly humble either. Just careful. "Hey," she said, drawing out the word like we were still siblings. Like everything hadn't shifted beneath us. "Look, I know things got weird. But can we talk?" I said nothing. She jumped into it anyway. My financial aid didn't go through. Something about the parent contribution info changing. I guess. Dad removed some stuff. I waited. They said I owe $5,000 by the end of the month. I thought you might, I don't know, help me figure it out. Maybe talk to Grandpa or just lend it to me for now. She didn't ask how I was doing. Didn't mention the years I paid rent while she got AirPods and Amazon boxes and tuition in full. Just went straight to the part where I save her from her first real consequence. "Sell the car," I said. "What?" "The Mini Cooper." "Sell it? Pay your tuition." She scoffed. "That was a gift. It's not even worth that much now. Then find a cheaper school. Or a job." Silence. "Wow," she said finally. "You really hate me, don't you?" "No," I said, calm as ever. "I just finally like myself." I hung up. The next morning, Grandpa handed me a folder. Legal paperwork. Transfers. Deeds. Trust reallocation. He didn't say much. Just, "It's all moving to you now. You build something better." And then he went back to his coffee. Meanwhile, my parents were beginning to feel the weight of absence, not just of money but of access, because for the first time, they couldn't use me to clean up their mess. And that silence cost them more than they ever expected. The next attempt wasn't subtle. A courier dropped off a handwritten letter with gold trim on the envelope. No return address, but I recognized my mother's script immediately. Inside was a folded note. Dinner at the house. Just family. Let's talk this through. They had never used couriers before. Not when I was scraping together rent. Not when I missed Thanksgiving because I had to cover a double shift. But now that the estate was shifting and the trust had a new name on it, now they remembered my address. I didn't reply, but curiosity got me. At 7:12 p.m., I drove by the house, slowed just enough to glimpse the table through the bay window. Extra plate, polished silver, my name on a folded card, still performing, still staging love like a play they hadn't rehearsed. The next morning, Kylie posted a filtered picture of the table. He didn't show, but we tried. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The comments handled that part. One said, "You got a new car. He got a night shift. That was the real try." Another, "Spoiled people always think silence is cruelty." That weekend, I launched a scholarship through the bakery. Quietly, for students who aged out of foster care. No parents. No fake dinner tables. Grandpa matched the fund without hesitation. The headline in the paper said, "Local business owner pays forward second chance." And just like that, I reclaimed my name. Not through a fight, through proof. By mid-month, Grandpa finalized the paperwork. His attorney came by with a thick file, everything notarized and signed. It was official now. The trust, the properties, the accounts, all mine. My parents weren't just disinherited. They were removed legally, permanently, irreversibly. They couldn't contest it, couldn't access a cent. When word got around, they panicked. First came another email. This one from my dad. "We've made mistakes, but cutting us out completely? That's not what your grandfather really wants. He's just upset. We can still fix this." They still didn't understand. This wasn't anger. This wasn't revenge. This was correction. Then Kylie sent a voice message. She was crying. Not the kind of crying that asks for forgiveness. The kind that asks for restoration. "I don't know how to live like this," she said. "Everything's falling apart. You don't know what it's like to go from everything to nothing." Actually, I did. That's the part they all forgot. That I'd already survived what they were now barely starting to feel. Only I hadn't crumbled. I'd adapted. I'd built something from it. I didn't reply to Kylie or Dad, but I did write a short note to Grandpa's attorney. Let's move forward with the foundation transition. No more waiting. No more permission. It was time to finish the rebuild. On my terms. I got another letter. This one wasn't handwritten. It was typed, printed on expensive paper, signed by both my parents at the bottom. They called it a statement of intent. Said they'd like to pursue informal mediation in hopes of mending the emotional disconnect in the family. They wanted to meet, public setting, neutral third party, a therapist if needed. They said Grandpa had acted in a moment of passion, and that with time and logic, things could be put back together. Claimed they were trying to bring stability back to a misguided situation. They weren't reaching out to me as a son. They were addressing me like a gatekeeper, someone holding keys they couldn't duplicate. The language wasn't emotional. It was tactical. I showed it to Grandpa. He read it once, didn't even blink. "They're building a paper trail," he said, "preparing to claim coercion or undue influence." I nodded. They think they can still negotiate. By early fall, the bakery had grown beyond what I imagined. We hired 2 full-time bakers. Grandpa invested in a second location near the university. The Foundation Trust opened applications for next year's scholarship, and within a week, we had over 140 submissions. Real stories, real struggle, no handouts, no performance, just people like me finally getting seen. Then one afternoon, I heard a name I hadn't in a while. My father. He showed up at a town council mixer. Not the kind of place he ever used to be seen, but now that his own name had dried up, he was borrowing mine. I heard from two separate people that he introduced himself as Jake's father. You've probably heard about his bakery project. He smiled when he said it, like it still belonged to him. Word reached me fast. Small towns don't forget even if they forgive. But this wasn't about vengeance. It was about boundaries. And his were gone. The next week, I sent a formal notice to the local chamber. A signed statement requesting that neither of my parents be permitted to appear as representatives of the foundation, bakery, or scholarship in any context, public or private. I didn't tell Grandpa first. When I showed him the letter, he smiled, leaned back in his chair, and said, "Took you long enough." That weekend, I hosted a dinner. 15 chairs. All scholarship applicants. All people who had once been erased by family, by systems, by silence. We talked about second chances. We passed bread. We toasted without gold-rimmed glasses or folded napkins. And for the first time in my life, I realized something. They hadn't just excluded me. They taught me what not to become. It happened quietly. Grandpa passed the final documents to me in a slim black envelope. "This is everything," he said. "It's all cleaned up now. No gray areas. No loopholes." Inside, the revised deed transfers, updated foundation articles, and a new clause in his will that left nothing, not a dime, to his daughter, his son-in-law, or their second-born. He didn't make a speech, just poured 2 cups of coffee and turned the radio on. The weight of it settled in the room. Final. I felt it more than I expected. Not joy, not revenge, just stillness. I'd spent years chasing their attention, their approval. Even in silence, I was hoping someone would wake up, say something real, own it. But this wasn't about closure anymore. It was about clarity. That same day, Kylie posted another one of her vague quotes online. "Some people change, others just disappear." A dozen likes. 2 comments from friends saying, "Stay strong." She always knew how to craft a sympathy post without revealing anything. But this time, no one tagged me. No one messaged. The story had shifted. I was no longer the silent brother in the background. I was the one with the name on the door, the trust, the articles of incorporation. And they were shadows in someone else's success. That night, I made one final update to the foundation bylaws. A quiet clause, legally airtight. No grants, distributions, or employment offers may be extended to the founder's immediate family, biological or legal, under any circumstance. It wasn't punishment. It was policy. It rained the day we opened the second bakery. Not a storm. Just a soft, steady drizzle that made the air feel cleaner than usual. We didn't do a ribbon cutting. No press. Just unlocked the door and flipped the sign to open. The line was already forming. Students, parents, old clients from Grandpa's business circles. A few professors from the university who'd read about the scholarship fund and wanted to see it for themselves. Around 10:15, I saw them. My parents, across the street, standing under a shared umbrella. They didn't come in, didn't wave, just watched. I kept wiping the counter, taking orders, greeting customers. But I saw them. Kylie was with them, arms crossed, face down, hair soaked. They stood there for 10 minutes, maybe 12, then left. No message, no scene, just silence, their final strategy. That night, Grandpa and I locked up together. He didn't mention the umbrella. But as we passed the storefront glass, he said they always thought they could stand outside and still control the room. He was right. They used to believe presence was power. But now? Now, I'd built something they weren't invited into. Not out of cruelty. Out of design. You don't leave the door open for people who would walk in and start rearranging furniture. They weren't guests anymore. They were observers. And that distance? It wasn't punishment. It was earned. The email came from an estate attorney I didn't recognize. Not mine. Not Grandpa's. It was theirs. A formal request to review disputed documentation related to a past gift, the $50,000 college fund. They framed it as a clerical question, just making sure everything aligns for tax purposes. But I knew what it really was. Desperation. They were scrambling. My parents hadn't just lost the future. They were now trying to rewrite the past, to challenge what they once pretended didn't exist. I forwarded the email to Grandpa's lawyer without a word. He responded an hour later, handled. That same day, I was invited to speak at a conference on youth entrepreneurship. Someone had read the profile piece and thought my story had inspirational weight. I almost declined. But then I thought of all the nights I worked till 2 a.m. while Kylie opened birthday gifts I helped pay for, Thought of the years I lived like a tenant in my own house while she got free rides and praise. Thought of my mother calling my struggle a character-building phase. And I said yes. At the podium, I didn't talk about betrayal. I talked about control. About how the most powerful thing a person can do is leave, not in anger, but with a plan. The standing ovation was quiet, not explosive. But it meant something. It meant the story was bigger than me now. And back home, the silence from my family finally started to feel like peace, not absence. Because they had asked the wrong question all along. They kept asking, "Why are you doing this to us?" But I wasn't doing anything to them. I was just done letting them do it to me. It's been almost a year. The foundation is now in its second cycle. We funded 14 students. Hired 3 of them. One's managing the front counter of our downtown location. He doesn't know the whole story, just that the man who signs his paycheck listens when he talks. The bakery runs without me most days. I show up when I want. Work the ovens when I feel like it. No pressure. Just presence. Real presence. Grandpa's still sharp. He walks slower, talks less, but when he does speak, it's clean and surgical. We don't bring up my parents anymore. Not because it hurts, but because it doesn't. They don't call. Don't show up. Don't pretend anymore. The last thing I heard was that Kylie moved back in with them. Dropped out of school. Said the pressure was too much. I believe her. She lived her life floating on borrowed air. And when it ran out, there was nothing to stand on. I never celebrated their downfall. There was no post. No toast. No victory dance. Just quiet. The kind of quiet they never knew how to survive in. They tried to raise a child they could shape into a servant, someone who'd thank them for every leftover scrap. Instead, they raised a man who walked away. And when they finally turned around, I wasn't standing there waiting. I was too far ahead to hear them. Too far forward to care. Too free to return. I never went back. And that was the loudest thing I ever said.